Welcome back to the Best Kept Business Secret podcast with me, your host, coach, author, and business media commentator, Mark Ford. On today's show, I reach across the pond once again to bring you an education in getting sales, customers, and clients without ever asking. Intrigued? Well, you should be. So today's guest is Stacey Brown-Randall, multiple award-winning author of the book Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, and host of her own podcast, Roadmap to Grow Your Own Business, and a brilliant keynote speaker. Over many years, Stacey has had the privilege of helping business owners like you, as well as known corporations and franchises in the real estate, well, we like to call that property over here in Blighty, financial and professional service industries. Stacey has been featured in national and international publications, as well as national media programs talking all things referral. So it gives me an amazing, great pleasure to introduce you to Stacey Brown-Randall. Hello, Stacey. How are you?
Hello, Mark. I am doing great. How are you doing?
We're doing okay. How is lockdown affecting you right now? So this kind of ages this podcast, I'm sure. But how are things with you guys? We're recording this in January 2022. So how are things with you guys right now?
You know, it's funny. We don't really use the term lockdown anymore because there are definitely parts in America where they don't even believe COVID exists. So, you know, we're a fun bunch over here in America. So, you know, for lockdown for us, it's masks. That's really what our lockdown looks like right now, is just wearing masks and being a little bit more cautious. But most of folks are just going about their business, for better or for worse, right? They're just going about their business.
So it's good. So I'm definitely going to age this podcast because it's just come out that apparently our Prime Minister had a party last year during lockdown. One rule for us, one rule for him. Brilliant. Well done. There you go. So I'm sure that's all to come out of you guys. You know, Donald Trump obviously wanted to, swallow bleach or whatever he was doing. But seriously, how did you guys cope with that?
I can't even answer that question. So we need to move on, please.
To be fair, I think everybody in Britain sort of applauded. We just went, well done, you haven't imploded yet. So well done. So look, referrals are massive. Networking has come back. People are working with people again. I really need to ask you, what is a referral? Because there are so many different meanings to it, but obviously as somebody that, it's your business to know what a referral is. What is an actual referral?
Yeah, you know, the fascinating thing about being an expert in a certain area is, in some cases, whether you are or not, you just kind of come up with your own definitions and with your own thoughts on what things are, and then you go out and sell it. And I think a lot of consultants and trainers and thought experts kind of operate from that space. But when I'm defining something, I always look at it from I like to reverse engineer, well, what is truly a referral? And I think the best way then to define it is the why we want it. So Mark, if I were to say to you, hey, I've got a couple of clients that I'm going to refer to you, and I'm going to connect you guys over email so that you can have a conversation with them and potentially start working with them. Why do you get so excited? Why do you get oh, this is cool? What's the sense for you?
Pretty much because I think for me personally, I think most of the selling, inverted commas, has already been done, because I think it's a measure of the individual that you are, in the fact that you are referring them to me, but they have that relationship with you, so that they almost know that you're not referring them to me for the sake of it. You're referring them to me because you trust me and you believe in what I do.
So that's typically the reason, right? I mean, the trust is transferred, which means that prospect shows up already trusting you, right? That potential client is like, yeah, I trust Mark because I trust Stacey, right? It's like that transfer of trust, which means, to your point, yes, there's a little less sales that is happening, because usually that prospect or that prospective client is easier to close, quicker to close, right? And because that trust is there, we're having a conversation versus that hard, cold sales pitch. So if you look at why you want a referral, well, then there's two things that have to be identified for that feeling to be there, for the trust to be transferred, for them to be quicker to close, there'd be less sales involved. There's two things that have to be there for that to actually happen, that sense and feeling to actually happen. And that is, one, they've got to be connected to you by a referral source. So the number one definition when we look at referrals, there's two parts. The first one is there has to be a personal connection, meaning that a referral source, which is just the human who's going to refer you, has to connect you to the prospect. The prospect has to be connected to you by the referral source. So when people say, oh, I got a referral the other day, somebody told me they were talking to their, business colleague and they gave him my name and number and they're going to follow up. I'm like, you didn't get a referral. You got word of mouth buzz, which is cool that somebody is out there talking about you and they need to hire you, but you don't know who it is because you haven't been connected to them. And so the personal connection piece is so very important when we think about it from that perspective of that trust being transferred. And then the second part to the definition outside of personal connection is need identified. The prospect has to know they have a problem that you supposedly can solve. And that's why they're willing to actually be connected to you and have a conversation with you. So the way we define referrals is it's going to be a personal connection and a need identified, which means you've got terms like word of mouth buzz, introduction, warm leads that are kind of used interchangeably with referrals, but those are actually 4 different types of prospective clients that show up, and you have to know how to respond to them, right? You have to know, wait, this is a referral. I get to have a different type of conversation because I don't have to sell as much, right? And then the other part is recognizing when it doesn't arrive as a true referral, do you know how to flip it into a referral with that referral source who's trying to make the referral happen? And it's those pieces that make a referral truly what it is. If you want a client to show up that is like easier to close, quicker to close, less price sensitive, and already trust you, it's because they've been referred to you. There's been a personal connection by someone they trust, and they have the need that you can solve. And that's how we define referral.
Okay. So referrals, when it comes to business, there are many businesses out there that tend to rely on 1, maybe 2 marketing pillars. And there are many marketers that I speak to that will sort of say you should always have 3 or 4. I totally agree with them, to be perfectly honest. When it comes to referrals, how should they be positioned in somebody's marketing plan? And I'm assuming that people have got marketing plans when they're listening to this or watching this, but I'm assuming, right? And honestly, there's been a big thing on my mastermind over the last sort of like few days where marketing, it almost needs to be spun on its head, because people sort of like do what they do because they're really good at what they do. And I don't think they actually understand that actually, they spend very little of their time doing what they do because actually they're really good at it. What they should be looking at in a business, and one of the first things they should be looking at, I believe, is marketing. And as more people that you market to, the bigger your audience, the bigger chance of you getting new clients, new customers, and therefore you should make it a priority. But within that, there are an awful lot of people that tend to look at 1, maximum probably 2 strands of marketing and think that's okay because it brings some customers in. If you were to sort of like position referring and referrals, where would that be? Where should that be in somebody's marketing plan across a year?
So the way that I look at it is, let me take you up a 30,000 foot view perspective. And the way that I kind of teach where referrals fit and that kind of sales and marketing space is I look at it as the typical sales strategy. So if we take sales and we kind of say, okay, here's the bucket of how we bring in clients. And the 2 ways that are typically taught and have been taught for forever are there's a marketing side of that sales strategy, right? Because the marketing we do, we want to lead to sales, right? Client saying yes. And then there's a prospecting side. And you guys may use different terminology for how we kind of define the prospecting side. But when we look at the prospecting side and the marketing side, there are actually 2 parts to an overall sales strategy that every business should have. So if you do a lot of networking, like you in a lot of leads groups, or you're in a lot of networking groups and you go, or you're virtually, right? Spending time with people, we would put that in the prospecting side. It's that short-term mentality. I hope to go to these networking events and develop some relationships with folks who want to become clients. I want to meet somebody at this next networking event, right? And then you've got marketing. And that could be the fact that obviously I'm hoping everybody has a website at this point, right? But this could be that you have obviously a website. Maybe you do PR, like get some kind of publicity for your business, earned media. Maybe you do Facebook ads. So it's different things of how we categorize sales. And we look at it as there's things that you do that are prospecting in nature and things that are marketing in nature. And the reality of both of those is you actually think differently when you're in those activities. Prospecting is very short term, right? If you're making cold calls, you are prospecting. And it's like, hey, I want to make these 40 dials today, and I'm going to just hope and pray that somebody answers the phone that actually wants to talk to me, right? On the other side with marketing, right? If you were actually running Facebook ads, or maybe you're doing print media or whatever it is that you're doing that's more marketing in nature, from that perspective, maybe, you have a podcast, something like that, and it's more marketing in nature, right? You're still looking at it of how you want it to bring in clients, but it's a longer term play. You understand there's a little bit longer term from a marketing side to get someone to the place of saying yes to working with you. The problem with referrals is that most people who teach referrals will teach you that referrals either have to fit in prospecting or they have to fit in marketing. And if you take referrals and you force them into prospecting, then the tactics that come out of that are, we'll just ask for those referrals, because that's the short-term mentality to get you as quickly as possible to a referral is just ask everybody you know for one, or offer to pay or compensate or do kickbacks, right? For people who give you referrals, or just network all the time to know a ton of people so you're always being seen. So you have the potential to generate referrals. Those tactics come out of thinking that referrals fit within prospecting, which is not where they fit. But the other side of it is, well, then referrals fit in marketing. And that's when we get advice like be really gimmicky and overly promotional on your referrals, like putting in your email signature line, the greatest compliment you can give me is a referral, right? Like nobody's paying attention to your email signature where it says the greatest compliment you can give me is a referral.
Do people actually do that? I've never seen that. Do people actually do that genuinely?
Oh gosh, it's huge. Yes, it is.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's like because it's, and I think a lot of it is what it's taught, right? And we see it a lot in the real estate or property in your world, right? We see it a lot in that area. But we see it in other ones too. Like they literally will put in their email signature or in their e-newsletters, right? Oh, by the way, I'm never too busy for your referrals. Like this gimmicky promotional stuff that they think that is triggering someone to think about referring them. So the tactics that are typically taught and have been taught for decades, long before I've been alive, the techniques that have been typically taught have been prospecting in nature, ask for your referrals, pay for your referrals, network to be seen and know a ton of people to get referrals, or marketing, which is be overly gimmicky and overly promotional to be able to generate those referrals. But when you look at the psychology and the like science, like the brain science behind why someone gives a referral and what actually triggers a referral, what you recognize is referrals don't fit in prospecting and marketing. They are absolutely still a part of your overall sales strategy, definitely, but they deserve their own leg to the stool. So if you look at prospecting and marketing as a two-legged sales stool, then what I would say is, well, we need a third leg. We need a three-legged stool in your sales strategy, and referrals needs its own area, because everything about referrals is different, from the mentality you have to the time it'll take to grow that kind of referral strategy to working in your business to who you're going to be doing stuff for to be able to generate more referrals. Like everything's different on the referral side. And I always tell folks, you need all legs of the stool. Like, have you ever tried to sit on a one-legged stool or a two-legged stool? It's not very comfortable. Most stools are going to be three-legged because that's going to be more comfortable to sit on. And it's the same thing with your sales. You probably are doing some things that are prospecting in nature that bring in potential clients. Same thing with marketing. And then of course, I also want you to have a referral strategy. Now, personally, for the clients that I work with, I want their referral strategy to be the biggest way that they bring in, the biggest piece of the pie of how they bring in clients. But absolutely, I would assume they're going to have other ways to bring in clients. It's the same thing with my business. I may bring in the majority of my clients through referrals and some of my best clients through referrals, but I'm still doing other things as well to generate, right, brand recognition and credibility. And then of course, bringing in other clients in other ways that won't come through referrals, whether that's through my podcast or through my book, right, or some of the speaking engagements that I do. So there's other things being done as well. It is having a well-oiled machine, but the referral piece has to be a standalone strategy that you execute on.
See, what's really interesting is right at the very start of your answer to that, you mentioned website, and I don't know whether you know this figure, but I actually strangely looked it up a little bit earlier this morning, believe it or not, because somebody else was talking about websites. Is that 39% of UK small businesses have not got a website, and 32% of American small businesses have not got a website yet. Those are Google's own figures.
I am like not surprised and still shocked at the same time. Like, yeah, I can't imagine operating in a post-COVID world without a website, let alone pre-COVID operating without a website. I do know it exists. I do know that it happens, right? But yes, I think that is nuts.
It's quite a staggering number. And I get they sort of like trying to appear on page one of Google and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people kind of misuse websites, especially when it comes to referrals. My suggestion possibly is that it's a great signpost. It's a great poster. It's a great advertising board for you guys to tell people what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and how much you do it for effectively. And I don't know, when it comes to referrals, is that a tactic that you use? Is that you try and signpost people towards your website, perhaps more than social media, because social media can get very murky, and things can be dragged up from about 22 years ago that nobody really wants to say anything about.
Well, it's interesting. What's interesting about websites when it comes to referrals? I have people ask me all the time, like, when it comes to referrals, most people before they decide to hire you are going to check you out.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people who are actually referred to you won't do nearly as much digging as somebody who's trying to decide if they can trust you.
I like your choice of words there, digging. I think maybe. I don't know, but I like the choice of words.
Well, so it's this idea that, right, like if I'm referred to you, like, okay, I'm thinking about an attorney that was recently referred to me. Like, her CPA said, you need to grow your business and you need to do it in a way that's going to work for you. And so you need to hire Stacey and you need to go through her Growth by Referrals program and learn how to get referrals without asking and create the strategies that she teaches and put them into place. Now, this CPA has referred me a ton of attorneys over the years, and we've had great success with them. And so he knows what he's talking about, right? When he is referring her to me, and he knows what she needs. And that's not always the case with a referral, which is great though. But she never looked at my website. She never checked me out. She took her CPA's recommendation and then hopped on a call with me, and we had a conversation so I could figure out exactly what she needed and if my strategies were going to work. And I could meet some of the other people on her team that would probably be doing the work. And then she decided, she was like, yeah, okay, now give me the details. So she went to a page on my website that explained the level that she would be joining at to be able to work with me, and then went to the checkout page and signed up. So when you're actually referred to someone, sometimes you actually don't have to feel the need to do all the, let me see what's on social media about them. Let me see about their website. Let me find their testimonials. Those things are all important, and people can be referred to you and still use those things. But I have found when you're referred, those things are relied on a little bit less because someone's being referred to you. On the other hand, if someone's finding you cold, or maybe like someone's hearing me on your podcast right now, and they're like, okay, I'm going to check Stacey out a little bit more and figure out a little bit more about what she's like, they're not just going to immediately jump to, let me hire Stacey. They're going to go to my website, I would hope, right? They're going to check out my book. Maybe they'll come listen to the podcast, because whereas they trust you and they listen to your podcast every week, I'm still an unknown entity to them, and they're going to want to check it out a little more. So all those assets, right, that I have in my business is my ability for people to understand my philosophy and how I teach, so that they can decide if my strategies work for them. And so it really just depends on the person that's referred. But a lot of times when someone's referred to you, they're going to check less on your website. Do you still need one? Yes. I don't think that's ever up for debate or a question, even though 32 of UK businesses or 32 of American businesses would disagree. But I would say from that perspective, that website piece matters a little less when you're referred, but you should never use that to replace not having one, because I still think it kind of builds the identity of your business. And I think that's important.
So I love that. So what was brought up recently is the amount of, certainly here in the UK, I'm fairly certain it's happened in the US as well, because of the pandemic that we've gone through, and the amount of people that were laid off, or the amount of people that decided that actually corporate life really wasn't for them and they'd rather work from home. there have been a significant amount of startups. What would you say to people that at present getting it, they're starting up, they're kicking in, they've got this business, they've got this service, they've got this product or whatever it is, and they are going to, do you know what? Nobody knows what's going on here, which is quite interesting, but when things flash up on your screen, it kind of scares you. Sorry about that. Honestly, it's called technical, all right? I'll put this out. I don't care, honestly. It's great because people will realize that actually podcasting is quite difficult. But when people are starting
up,
it's
not as easy as just turning on a microphone and just saying whatever's on your mind.
Oh God, no. No, seriously, the amount of podcasts that sort of like, started 3 weeks ago and they give up because they haven't got £500,000 in the bank already. No, right. Honestly, just a moment I'm having there, and this is going out. I don't care. Seriously, episode 118. Carry on as you'd like. But when businesses start up and they haven't got that referral bank, how can they get referrals to kick them on and keep them going?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There are 3 big strategies that I tell any business that they need to have. And those 3 big strategies there's only 2 of them that will apply to a brand new business. So the 3 strategies, so let me give you the 3 big strategies, and then we'll break down which one a new business should kind of be focused on. So the 3 big strategies are, one, I like to call it our low-hanging fruit strategy. It's the one I tell everybody to deploy first, like put this into practice first because it has the greatest chance of getting you more referrals. And that is your ability to nurture relationships with your existing referral sources, the people who are already or have referred you, your current referral sources, like creating the right strategy to be able to nurture more referrals from them. And there's a whole framework of how we do that from a psychology perspective and a language perspective. But the idea there is, hey, they've referred you before. If you probably just take care of them a little bit better and use some different language, you probably actually can find yourself getting more referrals from them. And it's where a lot of clients that I work with will have fast success, not like tomorrow success. I should probably qualify what I mean by fast, but within their first 3, 6, 9, 12 months, they're going to see what we like to call this referral explosion just from the people who've referred them before. But a new business doesn't have those people. Right. So this is a strategy that we tell folks, deploy this one first if you've been in business longer than a couple of years, because if you have some referral sources, it's the easiest one to put in place. It takes the least amount of time and can sometimes have the greatest results you need. And for some people, that's their only strategy. They're like, I got this one going. I got what I need, and off to the races. And I'll check in with them years later and they'll be like, yep, everything's great. I'm still getting tons of referrals from that one strategy. So that's the existing referral source strategy. The second strategy I tell businesses to have is how are you going to take a client or contact and turn them into a referral source to get them to refer you for that very first time and then keep them referring you. So we call this the strategy for potential referral sources, or sometimes I'll call it our soon to be referral sources, but it's identifying the right clients and the right contacts. So it's not everybody on LinkedIn, but it's a much smaller number of people who actually have the potential to refer you, because you need 2 things for a referral to happen. You need opportunity and you need desire. You do not control somebody else's opportunity to refer you, right? Those are things that come up when they're happening in the moment. Those opportunities happen. What you do control is the desire to pick you over the 30,000 other real estate agents or financial advisors or wealth managers or attorneys in your area, right? So when we're trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to get more referrals, or how are we going to get any referrals from people who've never referred us? It starts with the identification of the people who actually have the opportunity to refer you. So an easy example of this would be for a realtor or real estate agent, right? When they're thinking about like who they can actually get referrals from, right? It really just depends on kind of like what it looks like and who would actually refer to them. But sometimes their clients can be their best referral sources. Or let's talk about like a mortgage loan officer, right? Their best referral sources are actually real estate agents, and they want to cultivate relationships with them. So it's figuring out who has the opportunity to refer you, and then going through a process that we teach of how you cultivate someone who's never referred you into a referral source. And it takes longer. Like that's the one thing I always tell folks, like I am not your get rich scheme, right? I'm not your get rich quick scheme. And I don't have a silver bullet. And all of this comes down to your ability to cultivate relationships with people who would then put their reputation on the line when they refer you. And sometimes that takes more than one little, hey, how you doing conversation. And so we teach a cultivation process to take someone through that you would want to start referring you. And that's where I would tell a new business to start. Start with identifying the people that you would love to get referrals from, but also have opportunity to refer you. And then we teach a framework of like, what does that look like? And how do you cultivate them through that process? And like, how often and what are you saying? And all the pieces are a part of that framework. Then the third strategy, and any business can do this one. The third strategy is, you've got to be referable. Like, it's one thing to have relationships with people who are willing to refer you. But if we kind of go backwards, it's like, well, first of all, let's actually make sure you're referable, right? Like, that's kind of important from that perspective. And so making sure that you are referable is really important. And that happens within your client experience. And within your client experience, there are actually opportunities to pull out referrals from it. So it's having a client experience that makes you referable. So that's part of the strategy. And then the second part of that strategy is then also looking for those opportunities and those moments to be able to generate referrals from your client experience. And that becomes very process driven so that it can happen with every client. It won't always happen. You won't always get referrals from every client, but the process is there. So again, the strategies are existing current referral sources. Let's get more from them. Potential referral sources. People who've never referred us, let's get one new one from them and then get more from them. And then our client experience, let's be referable. And in addition to that, let's make sure that in addition to being referable, we're also being able to get referrals from our client experience. And those are the three big strategies we teach. There's a lot of other nuanced strategies we teach as well, but we usually call those like the level 2 once you have the big strategies in place.
So you talk about client experiences an awful lot. And it's really interesting is that I often sort of like coach businesses to remind them that their business is not about them. It starts with them, and it's never about them, because I think it was Sam Walton that turned around and said the most important person in your business is never you, it's the customer, because they can hire and fire you whenever the hell they want. Something along those lines. And it is so damn true. So the client experience, explain to me the sort of like the three parts of a client experience that every business should really plan for to get them on board and, and to keep them sweet.
Yeah. So I'll just say this based on your comment about the client's more important. And I totally agree with you on that, except there's one more person who's actually more important than the client or you as the business owner. And in our world, that's the referral source. Because they're the ones who.
I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. No, that's
good.
fine. I'll give you that one. Right? They're level par. All right, there we go. Okay.
Okay. So moving right along. So the way that I teach a client experience. So here's the thing to understand. There's so much amazing information out there in the world today and fabulous books that have been written about the client experience. But most of them are written for bigger businesses. And so my zone of genius and the area of folks that I like to work with, we're talking about small businesses or even solopreneurs, right? So it's like maybe just you, or it's maybe you and a small team. When you look at some of the strategies that you will see bigger businesses implementing when it comes to the client experience, it's not the same thing with us being able to implement them in our world with our capacity, with how we serve our clients. So the one way that I teach client experience is looking at it from a small business perspective. And then also understanding there's some best practices to pull into that come from bigger companies, right? But looking at it from a small business perspective. And the number one way that I have found that people need to think about their client experiences is in stages. Because if you think about your client experience in stages that your client goes through, and there's a max of 3 in my version, it helps you figure out, okay, then I just need to figure out my client experience in this stage. And then when that's fixed, I can go fix it in this stage and then this stage. So the 3 stages are, the first stage is new. From the minute a client says, yep, Mark, I'm going to hire you, that they have then entered into your client experience. They've come out of the buyer's journey. They've made a decision. The decision is yes. And so now they've become a client. And that is at the moment when the client experience begins. You have to determine when they're no longer new. So when their client experience begins, they have entered into the new stage. And you say, is that 30 days? Is it 12 days? Right? Is it a year? It just really depends on how you determine somebody to be new. So for example, for a business coach may decide that you're new up until we've had your very first coaching session. So whether you start and then you don't start for 30 days and your your new stage is going to go 30 days until your very first coaching session. And then after that, you exit the new stage and you move into what we call the active stage. The active stage is where actually the majority of the work that you're doing for them, whatever that looks like, is going to actually be delivered. For some businesses, though, you never exit out of the active stage and you stay ongoing active, right? So think about a financial advisor that wants to manage your money every single year, right? Or a CPA that wants to prepare your taxes every single year. And so you stay in that ongoing active stage, and like hopefully like they want is forever. You'll be a client forever. You won't leave them. But if you don't, if the work you do ends, so like, hey, I'm coaching you for a year and then I'm done coaching you, you exit out of the active stage and you move into what we call the alumni stage. And so it's just a better word, in my opinion, than calling your clients previous or past clients. We call them alumni clients because it makes you think about them differently. The way we think about it from a university setting, right? Our alumni students, we want to keep being in touch. So think about a university, right? Wants to keep being in touch with their alumni because that's where they get their money, right? Like that's important. Well, we think about that from a client experience, moving them into the alumni stage, because if we have actually a client experience, when they're no longer clients and they're in the alumni client stage, that's our chance to be able to bring them back around as a repeat client and to continue to generate referrals from them as well. So we look at that client experience in those three stages. You either have 2 or 3 of them.
Mate, that's superb. That is honestly, this is great stuff. I'm absolutely loving these knowledge bombs. I really am. We're gonna do 2 more questions. Okay.
Bring it.
Yeah, and you know the last one, but honestly, that will scare most people in Britain. But I want to just touch on your view on goals. I have a very strongly held belief in goals that SMART goals are for idiots. Simply because I've said I'm being open and as honest as I always am about this, is that having been in the corporate life, having seen people try and follow SMART goals effectively have become one of the biggest tick box exercises to get idiot business coaches like me off their back, or their bosses, or their chief executives, or whatever. There genuinely is never, ever a consequence for them basically writing bullshit down for 2 hours on a Monday afternoon at the start of January. So as we're at the start of January, what are your view on goals? Because you have a very unique way of setting goals and then making them actually happen. Let's just talk me through that.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think my process for goals is called reverse goal setting. And I think setting goals is actually pretty easy. Like it's you and a piece of paper and a pen and you're writing down some thoughts, right? Whether you're making them smart or not, right? You're just writing down some thoughts. I think setting goals is actually the easier part. The harder part is actually accomplishing them. And that's all based then on how you set them. So there's a lot of ways. I don't know. I think this is just one of those gifts from God that I got really lucky that he decided that I should have, which is this ability to look at things in a reverse way. I mean, I do it with my referrals. Like everyone teaches you referrals and by asking, and I'm like, don't you dare ask. And I teach you referrals without asking, like just the opposite of how everybody teaches it. And the same thing's kind of the case for my reverse goal setting. Most people teach you to set goals and they're like, okay, it's January. What goals do you want to accomplish this year? And I think that is the single worst question you can ask yourself when you're sitting down to write down some goals, to set some goals, is be like, what do I want to accomplish this year as my goals? Bad question, wrong question. The question you need to be asking is, where do I want to be in 5 years? And so there's a process within my reverse goal setting process where we do this thing called the 5-3-1. And we actually look 5 years out. Can you go further out? Yes. 10 years out, make your vision board. That's awesome. Whatever you want to do, if that helps you, and know where you want to be in 10 years. But to actually put things into place to make like progress on our goals, 5 years is what I found is actually to be the best marker. So 5 years out, what do you want to accomplish in business and in life? Because most of the time when people do this process with me, there's more personal things on that list 5 years out than there are actually business things. There are always business things, but usually it's what your business will provide you to have in your personal life. The number one thing you have to do though, when you do this 5-year step, is you actually have to write down how old you will be at the end of 5 years. Mark, for some people, that is a very painful process to write
It
down
is,
their
yes.
age.
I'm just thinking exactly that same thing. I've got to be honest. I'm already grey, but I've just gone slightly grey at the moment you asked that question.
You can like feel yourself getting older. You're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then we say, okay, well then write down how old your partner will be, right? Write down how old your partner, your spouse will be, your children will be. If you have children, right? How old will they be at the end of 5 years too? It's sobering. It's like, whoa, I'm going to get old. And I don't like getting old, but that's my vanity speaking. So for me, this is a really hard exercise, but it does force me to think about, okay, wait, my son will be a senior in high school. Like I got to make the next 5 years count. So what really actually matters, right? Oh my gosh, my daughter's going to be going off to college. Like it's all the things, right? So when you look 5 years out and you put down how old you're going to be, and then the people most important to you, how old they're going to be at those end of those 5 years from that perspective, you really are looking at it in that way. And that's really important to pay attention to it in terms of, okay, so then what do I really want to accomplish? Then we just back into that. Okay, great. Here's where you want to be in 5 years. Now here's where you want to be in 3 years to be on pace for 5 years. It's called the 3-year milestones. And then we do it again. So you go 5-year vision. Where do I need to be in 3 years to be on pace? 3-year milestones. And then where do I need to be at the end of 1 year to be on pace for my 3-year milestones, which will put me on pace for my 5-year vision? That 1-year plan effectively becomes your goals for this year, which means they are attached to something that ultimately really matters. And when you can define a why your goals of this year matter because of somewhere you want to be or something you want to do in 5 years, you'll fight for them just a little bit more when life gets crazy. And that's really important because goals are really fun in January, not so much in April or July or October when life is happening. And you have to make space. It's like run your business, manage your life, and somewhere in the middle, we got to make time for our goals. They're work. I mean, that's like the dirty little secret I say about goals is goals are work. Stop thinking they're not. We romanticize this idea of these goals we want to set. And at the end of the day, it's a lot of work to make them happen. So let's at least start with a plan in place that'll allow us to function well in terms of our ability to make progress on our goals.
I think that's really important. A lot of people sort of like look at goals and they haven't got real feeling or meaning in them. And it was really quite interesting when you sort of like saying you put why into it. So I have a client that, we were chatting just before Christmas, and where he is now compared to 3 years ago is it's poles apart. It's magnificent. I am so proud of this individual. But effectively, when it boils down to questioning, I'm kind of trying to understand why they've achieved what they've achieved is because they just, and it was it was just 4 words. I wanted to be happy. And it was just like, wow, that's amazing. You've achieved this just because you wanted to be happy. Yeah, because it meant something to me. It really did mean something to me. So now when they're now looking at their plans for the following year or the next 3 years, the next 5 years, they want to keep that feeling. They want to keep that feeling. And in the same way that if somebody's looking at their numbers right now in January and coming up to April here in the UK, and they're disappointed and they're pissed off, good. I'm glad you're disappointed. I'm glad you're pissed off.
Right.
But actually, no, I am. Because actually, I want them to then go and have a look at those numbers and go, okay, so where do you want to be in a year's time? Do you want this same feeling? No. Okay, where do you want to be in 3 years? Do you want that same feeling again? No. Where do you want in 5 years? Would you want that same feeling? God, no. Well, if it's God, no, what are you going to do? How are you going to change how you feel right now to how you can feel in 5 years? And yeah, I'm absolutely on board with that completely.
Well, and you know what I find folks actually go through the reverse goal setting process. And then we have like a dashboard that they can access after they've kind of been through the process that helps them stay on pace throughout the year. And I tell them to like add in their own level of accountability. But even like last year in 2021, when I was checking in at the end of the year with the people who actually stick with it, because let's be honest, lots of people in January are like, yeah. And then it's like the numbers.
Like New Year's resolutions, right? Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So the numbers dwindle, but like checking in with just 8 people at the end of 2021, after they had done the reverse goal setting process, they had set their goals, they were using the goals dashboard, and there was a level of accountability that they had built into this for them. But these 8 people, 32 goals accomplished in 1 year. 8 people
Wow.
collectively accomplished. And these are totally different people all around the United States. I think this group was not international. I think it was just national for me, but all around the United States in different businesses at different life stages. Some were having babies, some were kids were going off to college, like some were grandparents. 8 business owners, 32 goals collectively crushed in 1 year because they followed this process, and then they tracked it through our goals dashboard. And then they had to build in a level of accountability, and that accountability does not have your name on it. It has somebody else's name on it. And that's really important, whether it is a business partner or a business, a best friend in the business that you guys are going to do this together, or you're going to pay somebody to hold you accountable.
Wow. That's amazing. That's brilliant. Now, the last question, and you knew this was coming because we actually talked about this before we came on air. All right. But I want to put this in the podcast because I love your story about it. I know you don't, but I don't care.
I think I'm going to have my microphone malfunction.
No, you really are not. No, I've got to be honest. So last week we saw the return of The Apprentice here in the UK. What was the first comment that you said to me as soon as I said that?
Well, I was just surprised it was still on the air. Even a UK version was actually, wait, that show is still I don't know when it started in the UK, but for me, I feel like The Apprentice in the United States ended 10 years ago? Maybe not. Maybe I just stopped watching it, but I was kind of surprised it was still on air.
Wow. I mean, seriously, we're still showing repeats of Morecambe and Wise and Dad's Army here in the UK. So it really doesn't surprise me at all that it's still on air. But tell us your story about The Apprentice and almost now how you view it, because I think that's really important actually, because I have. And I've caused a little bit of upset on social media about my view of how I view The Apprentice. But tell us your story of your connection with The Apprentice and now how you kind of view that, looking back on it, so to speak. Go for it.
It'd be so much more fun if we just talked about my obsession with Ted Lasso. Wouldn't that be way more fun for everybody?
This podcast is not, unfortunately, sponsored by Apple TV, so otherwise you could be, right?
Oh, we are obsessed with that show here in the States. I don't know if you guys are, but we are totally obsessed with it.
It's becoming a thing. It's becoming a thing. But I'm one of those people that my partner tells me that I should watch something. And as soon as somebody tells me I should watch something, my brain goes, no, because that means that it's on trend and it's a bit trendy. I'll come to it in about 2 years' time, something like that. It's normally the way I work.
Sometimes you just got to be a late bloomer, right?
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
So what's interesting when you started talking about Apprentice, and I don't tell this story often, and now you're making me record it and put it out there for the world to hear.
This is great. This is like an exclusive, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really loving this.
I really do. So here's the thing. I used to talk about it a lot. And then somebody who was, the main person in The Apprentice then became our president. And then it was not impressive. Didn't want to tell anybody. From the UK to you guys. We are so sorry you had to put up with that for 4 years. We really are. Sorry about that. Half the country put them there. So, we sometimes have only ourselves to blame. Well,
it's a 50-50 and they were wrong. So that's fine.
Yes. Not everything in America is perfect and the streets are not paved with gold. So back in the day, I'm thinking my early 20s, The Apprentice had just come out. It was kind of a big deal. And so I actually submitted a tape, an audition tape to audition for The Apprentice. And I only thought about it recently because my husband pulled out a bunch of VCRs that we got from my mom's house when we were selling my parents' house and she was moving out. And my father had passed away a couple of years ago. And so I came home with all these VCR tapes and I was like, I'm just going to chuck them. Who has a VCR machine? I don't know how to watch
and for those under the age of 30, VCRs are videotapes, right? There's like a little thing that you have to put it in and press play and stuff.
And it's a big tape that goes in, not like the little USB. Yeah. And so he's like, wait, my mom has one. So he gets the VCR from his mom and he's starting to watch all these tapes. And he's like, it's like there was one tape just had a Will and Grace episode recorded on it. I don't know. It was like these random things on these tapes from my parents' house. One wasn't labeled and he put it in. And all of a sudden I hear him yelling for our 11-year-old daughter. Her name's Mackenzie. And he's like, Mackenzie, you got to see this. It's mom's audition tape for The Apprentice. And I was like, oh no. And I go into the bedroom and now I have to watch it. And I am mortified at myself. It was, here's the thing I would say about that tape. It got me a call back. I did get a call back. I did get to go and actually have an on-camera interview for The Apprentice. I wasn't chosen as one of the top 24 from that, but the audition tape was good enough to get me a call back. And it was really, really, it was embarrassing to kind of watch me on that audition tape. And now the show is like, you know, the idea is like, it was cool then. And now people have different opinions of, you know, Trump, who was in charge of The Apprentice back then. And so I don't really talk about it that often.
No. And I get that. But how do you genuinely, how do you think that would have, if you got onto it? You know, I've told you the experience that having watched the first episode of the latest series here in the UK, where, to be quite frank, if that's the best the UK has to offer, we are in serious trouble. How do you think it would have changed the path that you're on? Would you have been? There's a big thing with me about this is, would you have been taken as seriously as you've had to work to be taken seriously now, so to speak? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I don't, so 100, of course, I don't know, right? I don't know what the trajectory of my life would have been like had I made it on The Apprentice. I do know why I didn't get on. And a lot of that happened in the interview. And it was probably one of the worst interviews I'd ever been through. They were not interested in my business acumen. They didn't care about business and what I had done in my past. They were looking at it as, will she be someone that people will find drama in? And will she be good for TV? It wasn't about business. There was not one single question that I can remember, in fairness. I'm sure they have it recorded, but there's not one single question I can remember that was actually about business. And would I be smart at business? It was more about probably the look and the attitude. And will people want to tune in to watch her because will she create drama, or will she like fall in love, or like, it was all those kind of things. The questions they asked, I literally walked out of that interview and I was like, I need a shower. This is awful. Like, they don't care about business. They care about TV ratings. And of course you should know that, right? But on some level, there, at least the United States version, there've been some really smart business people that have actually been on The Apprentice. And then there's been some really just fun to watch reality stars that have been on The Apprentice that had no business being in business. And so I don't know. I don't think necessarily it would have shaped my business trajectory at all. Probably I wouldn't have met my husband, because I think I met him shortly after that, or we started dating shortly after that. And so I'm not really sure if it would have done anything for my life from a business perspective. And I really love my business and I really love the life that we've created. So I'm glad it worked out the way it worked out. But it wasn't anything like I thought it would be. Like, I left that interview. I had to go to Atlanta for that interview, Atlanta, Georgia. I went to Atlanta. I left that interview and I was like, never again. Never again. Like, this was terrible. I don't need to be a reality star or a TV star or in Hollywood or any of those things. That's not for me.
I also need to caveat this entire question, by the way, as somebody who has been on a reality TV show here in the UK, will never, ever fricking do it again. And whenever somebody asks me, what was it like? The first words out of my mouth is, don't do it. That is the first words out of my mouth. Yeah. It was one of the most unpleasant experiences, based on the back of some of the worst advice I ever had. And I would sure as hell never do it. All I can remember is that my son basically crawled up his own backside for the state of an entire week whilst it was on. And he went, Dad, never, ever do that again. And it goes back to a why is that I will never, ever do that again in any shape or form.
You know, it's funny. I remember when I was leaving the interview and I kind of knew this did not go well. And I remember one of the comments that were made to me. They were like, we're just trying to figure out, where are the chinks in your armor? And I was like, to exploit them so that I then become really good television fodder. Like, it's just not something, right? It's just not one of those, hey, did it? That was cool. I have an opinion that I now know. I'm very firm in, like you are, never doing that again, right? Never going to try that again. But it was still an experience, you know, and I was for a long time really proud that I did get a call back. I'm also very proud that I didn't get selected.
Stacey, this has been absolutely brilliant. I've absolutely loved spending this time with you. Love chatting to you. Look, tell everybody where they can find you. Tell everybody where they can come and look you up, come and hook up with you and all that sort of. No, hook up. That's probably not the right phrase, but you know what I mean. Just sort of like, I don't know whether Tinder's still a thing. Don't know. But whether they can come find you and all that sort of business over there, and where they can find out more about what you can offer their business. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happily married, so you're not going to find me on any of those dating apps. So just FYI. So don't think Tinder.
There are thousands of men that are just now crying in their beer here in the UK for that, right?
Doubtful. Okay, so home base is the best place to find me is my website. That's StaceyBrown-Randall.com, and Stacey has an E. That's the best place to find me. I'm on all the social media channels, but I really hang out on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can find me full name Stacey Brown-Randall. And then, of course, my podcast, Roadmap to Grow Your Business, for those podcast listeners. If you want to add this one to your queue and start listening to it, that's another podcast to check out.
Brilliant. Stacey, it's been an absolute bloody pleasure. It really has. It's been a great conversation. I hope we're going to do this again.
Yes.
We'll do this later on in the year, see how things are going there in the US, and seeing see how business and referrals and all that sort of stuff is changing, because it will do, because every single customer and client I think every business has changed significantly over the last 12, 18 months, 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, give her a round of applause for Stacey. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark, for having me.
And that is it for this particular podcast. So many knowledge bombs, so much stuff in there for you guys to unpick. And I've got to be totally honest with you. Perhaps our opinion on The Apprentice is probably not your thing, but guess what? It is what it is. If you want to find out more about Stacey, go and have a look at the show notes. All the links and stuff like that will be there. If you want the business that your hard work truly deserves, go and take a look at my website. Go and take a look at what I can do for you. And if nothing else, go and get yourself a bloody brilliant book that I wrote. Yes, I even wrote it. Go to the website, www.markford.uk, and try and get the business that your hard work truly deserves. I've been Mark Ford. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so much. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon.